The ship landed on Terra Prime with a soft hum, its silver hull shining under the Academy's bright sky. From its doors stepped many young beings from different worlds, each one beautiful, strong, and confident. Among them walked Lyra, a quiet Xanthari woman with soft violet skin and silver eyes that once shimmered like moonlight. But her glow was broken now. A deep scar ran across her left cheek, twisting down her neck like a burnt river, the mark of war. Raw, uneven, and impossible to hide. As she walked through the long marble corridor of the Academy, whispers followed her like shadows. "Is she a Xanthari?" One voice whispered. "She was, maybe," another said. "Not anymore. Look at her face. She could have healed that. Why didn't she?" Lyra heard every word. Her steps slowed. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't stop. She had heard worse before, on her homeworld, even among her own people. Beauty was sacred to the Xanthari. Their glowing skin and graceful features were symbols of pride. A scar like hers was seen as a curse, a reminder of imperfection. But Lyra didn't get that scar from vanity or accident. She had earned it saving others, during the last days of the Xanthari War. She had been a medical officer when her ship was struck. Fire and chaos surrounded her. She pulled wounded soldiers out of the wreck one after another, until an explosion threw her across the floor. She remembered the pain, the smell of burning flesh, the fading light, and then nothing. When she woke up, her face was half burned, her glow dimmed forever. The doctors said they could repair it with synthetic tissue, but she refused. She wanted to remember. To her, it was not an ugly scar. It was proof that she had lived when others had not. But to the world around her, it was only imperfection. The Academy on Terra Prime was supposed to be a new beginning, a place where species from many worlds learned peace, science, and unity. But even here, Lyra found no peace. People stared at her in the hallways. Some pitied her. Others laughed quietly behind her back. During lunch hours, she sat alone at the far corner table, her hood up, her gaze fixed on her tray. The food tasted of metal and silence. Around her, groups of students laughed, shared stories, and made plans. She listened, pretending not to care, but deep inside, a small part of her ached for what she had lost: belonging. At night, Lyra walked alone to the Academy's garden, where small blue lights floated above alien flowers. She would sit there for hours, tracing the scar on her face with her fingertips. It wasn't just a line of damaged skin. It was the line between who she had been and who she had become. She often wondered why survival came with such loneliness. Was it better to have died beautiful or to live scarred? Her heart always whispered the same answer: life was worth it. But her mind, tired from the cold stares, often disagreed. One day, during an orientation class, an instructor called for pair practice. No one moved near her. She could feel the gap forming around her like an invisible wall. The instructor hesitated, then paired her with a hollow dummy instead. The rest of the students laughed softly. Lyra smiled faintly, pretending she didn't care. But that night, when she returned to her small room, she sat on her bed and cried quietly. Tears rolled down her violet cheeks, shining faintly in the dim light. "Maybe I don't belong anywhere," she whispered to herself. Not on Xanthar. Not here. Yet deep inside her, something refused to break. A small spark of courage, of hope, still burned quietly within her heart. She didn't know it then, but that small spark would soon be seen by someone who could see beyond scars, someone who would change the way she saw herself forever. And on that distant world where beauty meant everything, it would be a human, not another Xanthari, who would teach her that true beauty lives not in smooth skin, but in a soul that has suffered and still dares to shine. Days passed slowly for Lyra at Terra Prime Academy. The campus was vast and full of life, students from dozens of species walking through shining halls, laughter echoing, knowledge blooming like 1,000 suns. Yet for her, it felt like walking through ice. Everywhere she went, eyes followed her. Some looked away quickly, embarrassed to be caught staring. Others didn't bother hiding their disgust. Lyra could almost hear their thoughts. She should have healed that. Why live with a scar? The Xanthari were known for their flawless beauty. Their glowing skin and graceful movements made them seem like beings carved from starlight. But Lyra's skin was imperfect, her glow interrupted by the blackened mark that ran down her cheek and neck. Among her own kind, she was considered damaged. Among other races, she was an oddity. At the Academy's cafeteria, she often sat alone in a corner seat near the window, Outside, the twin suns cast golden light over the academy gardens, where students laughed and joked in small groups. Lyra watched them quietly, playing with her spoon but never eating much. The laughter around her felt heavy, like it belonged to another world. Sometimes a few brave students tried to talk to her out of politeness, but the conversation always ended too quickly. Their eyes would drift to her scar, their smiles would fade, and they would excuse themselves politely. It wasn't cruelty, just discomfort, but that hurt more than open mockery. During training sessions, things weren't better. Lyra was skilled in strategy and survival, but no one wanted to partner with her. They said she made them nervous. Once, during combat drills, her assigned group simply left her behind to form their own team. The instructor looked awkward, then paired her with a combat drone instead. The others laughed quietly. After class, Lyra walked out, holding back tears. She wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of being the scarred one. Tired of pretending she didn't care. In the library, she found peace. The tall shelves filled with books from 100 worlds were her safe space. Here, no one stared. Here, only silence spoke. She often sat in the corner, reading old human literature. She liked their stories, their heroes who were flawed, broken, yet brave. Humans, she thought, had a strange kind of strength. They didn't fear scars. They called them stories. One evening, as she sat under the soft glow of the reading lamps, she thought of her home. The great city of Zenthar had floating towers and rivers of light. She used to walk there with her sister, laughing, dreaming of joining the medical corps. Back then, her life was simple, full of warmth. But after the war, when she came home with half her face burned, even her own people looked at her differently. Her sister couldn't meet her eyes. Her father spoke kindly, but his gaze carried sorrow. So she left, hoping the stars would give her a place where she could start again. But Terra Prime was not that place. It was beautiful, yes, but cold. Everyone here was chasing perfection. They didn't understand what it meant to survive something that tried to destroy you. One afternoon, she walked past a group of Zenthari cadets. They stopped talking when they saw her. One of them, a tall male with flawless glowing skin, whispered loudly, "Look, another reminder that not all survivors are lucky." His friends laughed softly. Lyra kept walking, pretending not to hear. But inside, her heart cracked a little more. That night, she sat in her room watching her reflection in the small mirror. The scar caught the light, dark and uneven. She ran her fingers over it and whispered, "I'm still me. I survived." Her voice trembled, but the words gave her strength. She didn't know that soon. Her quiet world of isolation was about to change. Someone would walk into her silence, someone who would not see a scar but a story. And that person would not come from Zenthar or any world of shining perfection. He would come from a small blue planet far away, called Earth. The next morning began like any other for Lyra, quiet and heavy. She walked through the academy courtyard with her hood up, keeping her head low. The soft wind carried laughter and chatter from every side. Students were preparing for the upcoming Cultural Alliance Week, a grand event where species shared their traditions and talents. Lyra had no plans to join. She had nothing to show except a face that made people uncomfortable. As she stepped into the library, her favorite place of silence, she found someone already sitting in her usual corner, a tall man with dark brown hair dressed in a gray uniform with the Earth emblem on his sleeve. He was human. He looked up and smiled. "Oh, sorry, is this your spot?" Lyra froze for a moment. No one ever cared about her spot. She hesitated before replying softly, "It's fine. I can sit somewhere else," but the man shook his head. "No, please, sit. The more the better. I was just reading about Zenthari medicine." That made her pause. "You were?" she asked, surprised. "Yeah," he said, smiling again. "Fascinating stuff. Your people are known for their healing technology. I'm Ethan Vale, by the way, captain trainee from Earth Fleet." Lyra's lips parted slightly. She hadn't spoken to anyone properly in weeks. "I'm Lyra," she said in a small voice. He nodded warmly. "Nice to meet you, Lyra." For a moment, silence hung between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Ethan seemed relaxed, curious, and genuine. He didn't look at her scar the way others did. His eyes didn't flinch or shift away. When he noticed her confusion, he chuckled softly. "You seem surprised I know about Zenthari. I studied interspecies history. Your people did something amazing during the Frontier War. You saved thousands of civilians, including humans." Lyra blinked. "Most people. Don't talk about that war. Well, they should, Ethan said firmly. My grandfather was on a transport ship rescued by a Zenthari medic. Maybe that's why I wanted to learn more. Lyra's chest tightened. She looked down, trying to hide her emotions. I was a medic, she whispered. Ethan's eyes softened. Then I should be thanking you. For the first time in months, Lyra smiled. Just a small one, but real. They spent that hour talking. Ethan was easy to talk to. He told her stories about Earth, about green forests, blue oceans, and old human traditions. He laughed often, his voice full of warmth. Lyra listened quietly, fascinated by how humans could sound both strong and gentle at once. When she finally looked at the clock, 2 hours had passed. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. The next day, she found herself going to the library again at the same time. And there he was, sitting in the same spot, waving her over. Hey, partner in reading, he joked. Want to continue our talk? Lyra hesitated, then smiled shyly. Okay. Days turned into weeks. They met often, sometimes in the library, sometimes in the garden. They talked about everything, cultures, stars, music, even fears. Ethan liked asking her questions, but he never pushed too far. When she spoke about her scar, he only listened. No pity. No awkward silence. Once she asked quietly, Doesn't it bother you? He frowned slightly. What? My face. The scar. He leaned forward, his tone gentle but serious. No, why would it? You earned it. You survived. On Earth, scars are symbols of strength. Every mark has a story. Lyra's eyes filled with emotion. No one had ever said that to her before. After he left that evening, she sat alone for a long time, thinking about his words. For the first time since the war, she touched her scar and didn't feel shame. She felt proud she didn't know it yet. But that simple meeting with a human would change everything. Her heart, her world, and her idea of beauty itself. Because while the galaxy saw her as damaged, Ethan saw something different, something brighter than any glow her skin had ever held. He saw Lyra, not the scar, and that made all the difference. The Academy soon began to notice. It started with whispers, soft, uncertain, but growing louder each day. Students saw Lyra and Ethan sitting together in the library, walking side by side through the gardens, even laughing quietly during breaks. For many, it was a strange sight. The scarred Zenthari woman and the most admired human officer, together. It didn't make sense to them. Some students smiled kindly, but most looked with judgment. He must feel sorry for her, they said. Humans are too sentimental. Others were harsher. A man like Ethan could have anyone. Why waste time on her? Lyra heard these words more than once. Each one felt like a small cut to her heart. But every time she looked at Ethan's easy smile, his warm brown eyes, and his gentle kindness, those whispers faded. Ethan never seemed to notice the looks or the laughter. Or maybe he noticed and simply didn't care. He always treated her the same, with respect and calm joy. One afternoon they sat by the Academy's lake, where silver fish swam through clear water. The sunlight reflected off the waves, painting golden patterns across the surface. Lyra had removed her hood for the first time in public. The wind brushed softly against her face, touching the scar like an old friend. Ethan glanced at her and smiled. You should do that more often, he said. What? She asked quietly. Let the sun see you. Lyra laughed softly. You humans have strange ways of saying things. He grinned. Maybe, but it's true. You hide from the world, Lyra, yet you have more light in you than anyone I've met. Her heart fluttered. She turned her gaze to the water, afraid he might see her blush. Light? She repeated. I thought I lost it. Ethan leaned back, watching the sky. You can't lose what's part of your soul. His words stayed in her mind long after that day, but peace never lasts long where envy and pride exist. A week later, during combat training, Lyra was partnered with Ethan for the first time. The instructor smiled knowingly. Let's see how our star couple performs, he joked lightly. The other students laughed, some whispering. Lyra froze, her cheeks burning. Ethan frowned slightly, but he didn't react. He focused on her instead. Ignore them, he said softly. They don't understand. She nodded, though her heart was heavy. The training began. They had to defend a control post from simulated drones. Lyra moved fast, precise, graceful in her movements. Ethan covered her with quick shots, his human reflexes sharp. They worked perfectly together. every step, every motion in sync. When the exercise ended, the scoreboard flashed victory in bold letters. They had beaten every other team. Cheers filled the room, but not for them. Some clapped politely. Others muttered that Ethan had done all the work. One alien cadet smirked. "Guess humans are good even with weak partners." Lyra stiffened. Before she could speak, Ethan turned sharply, his voice calm but strong. "Watch your words," he said. "She's twice the fighter you'll ever be." The room went silent. The instructor cleared his throat awkwardly, ending the session early. That evening, Lyra sat alone under the twin moons, feeling torn between sadness and gratitude. She hated that he had to defend her, yet she couldn't stop the warmth spreading through her heart. When Ethan found her later, he sat beside her quietly. "You know," he said softly, "when people mock, it's usually because they're scared." "Scared of what?" "Of seeing something stronger than they are," he replied. "You carry scars they couldn't bear." Lyra looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "You always say the right thing." He smiled faintly. "Maybe because I see the truth." In that silent moment, surrounded by the glow of alien stars, Lyra realized something she hadn't dared to before. Ethan wasn't just her friend. He had become her light, the one person who made her feel whole again. And though the world around them still whispered and mocked, neither of them cared anymore. Because when two souls truly see each other, no scar, no judgment, no barrier of worlds can stand between them. The days that followed felt softer, calmer. Lyra and Ethan spent more time together, walking through the academy gardens, studying side by side, or talking beneath the night sky. For the first time since she had arrived on Terra Prime, Lyra felt something close to peace. But peace can be fragile, especially when it hides pain underneath. One evening, after a long day of lectures, Ethan found Lyra sitting alone in the observation dome. The great glass ceiling opened to the endless stars. She was staring at them quietly, her hand resting against the window as if trying to touch the night itself. He sat beside her without speaking. For a long while, they just watched the stars together. The silence between them was warm, not empty. Then Ethan said softly, "You've been quiet lately. Something bothering you?" Lyra hesitated. Her silver eyes reflected the starlight, but behind them was a deep sadness. "Do you ever feel like the universe made a mistake keeping you alive?" Ethan turned to her, his expression serious. "No, never. Why would you say that?" Her voice trembled. "Because sometimes I do. Everyone who was with me that day, they died, Ethan. Every single one. And I'm still here, broken, scarred. When I look in the mirror, I see all the lives I couldn't save staring back at me." Ethan's chest tightened. He had seen soldiers speak like this before, haunted by survival, by guilt. But hearing it from her, from someone so kind and quiet, hit him harder than he expected. He reached out slowly, placing his hand over hers. "Lyra, you didn't survive by mistake. You survived because you were meant to, maybe not to save them, but to help others, to remind the world what courage looks like." Her lips quivered. "Courage?" she whispered. "Everyone says scars are ugly. Even my own people. They call me the dim one." Ethan shook his head firmly. "Then they're blind. On Earth, scars tell a story. My father used to say, every mark means you fought for something worth living for. You didn't lose your beauty, Lyra. You just gained proof that you're stronger than the pain." For a moment, she couldn't speak. Her throat felt tight, her heart heavy yet strangely lighter at the same time. His words sank into her like sunlight through dark clouds. She looked at him, tears welling up. "Why do you care so much?" He smiled gently. "Because I've seen enough perfect faces to know they mean nothing. But you carry the kind of beauty that doesn't fade. It's the kind that heals." Her heart skipped a beat. The air between them grew quiet again, filled with something unspoken. But even as she smiled faintly, a small part of her still feared the world outside their little circle of light. She knew the academy still whispered about them. She heard the comments when she passed. "The human feels sorry for her. He'll get tired soon." She pretended not to care. But sometimes at night, those words returned like echoes in her mind. One night, she stood before her mirror again. The reflection stared back at her, the scar, the broken glow. She touched it softly. "He says I'm strong," she murmured. "But if he saw what I really feel..." Her voice faded. She didn't finish the thought. She remembered the faces of those she lost. The screams, The heat of the explosion, and shook. Then she heard a soft knock. "Lyra? It's me." Ethan's voice called gently from outside her door. She wiped her tears quickly and opened it. He stood there holding a small crystal light, a human gift. "I thought you might like this," he said. "It glows even in darkness." She looked at it, then at him. Something inside her broke and healed all at once. She stepped forward and hugged him tightly. He froze for a second, surprised, then wrapped his arms around her carefully. "I'm scared, Ethan," she whispered. "Of losing this, of losing you." "You won't," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the stars shone bright above Terra Prime, and for the first time in a long time, Lyra believed that maybe, just maybe, her scars were not the end of her story. They were the beginning of something new. The calm days didn't last. Peace never does. It was supposed to be an ordinary training mission, one of the last exercises before the Academy's graduation week. Cadets from many worlds boarded a small starship to simulate a rescue mission in orbit around the nearby moon. Lyra and Ethan were among them, assigned to the same team once again. Lyra felt a strange heaviness that morning. The air seemed too still, too quiet. She brushed it off, smiling at Ethan as they boarded the ship. "Ready to save the galaxy, Captain Vale?" He laughed. "Always. Especially with you on my team." She rolled her eyes playfully but couldn't stop the small smile that warmed her face. The simulation began smoothly. Their ship, the Aurora, circled the moon while teams practiced coordination. Lyra managed the medical deck, scanning for life readings. Ethan was on the command bridge, giving orders and monitoring navigation. Everything felt normal until the alarms blared. "Warning! Unknown objects approaching fast," the AI voice shouted. Lyra rushed to the control station. The radar screen lit up with red signals. 5, 10, 15 small drones speeding toward them. But these weren't Academy drones. Their energy signatures were wrong. Wild, unpredictable. Ethan's voice came through the comm. "All cadets, this isn't part of the simulation. Prepare for emergency defense." The ship shuddered as the first drone hit the hull. Lights flickered, smoke filled the corridors. Panic spread among the cadets. Lyra grabbed her medkit and ran to the injured students as explosions echoed through the deck. Her heart raced, but she moved with practiced calm. "Stay with me. You'll be fine," she shouted over the alarms. Then through the smoke she heard a voice. Ethan's voice. "Lyra, the engines are failing. We're sealing off sections to stop the fire. Get out of there now." "I can't," she yelled back, pulling a trapped student from beneath fallen metal. "There are still people here. Lyra, please. The section's unstable." But she didn't stop. The heat grew unbearable. Flames danced along the walls, spreading fast. Her skin burned, memories flooding back. The explosion from years ago, the screams, the pain. Her breath caught. She froze for a moment, fear gripping her. Then she heard another explosion, closer this time, and instinct took over. She dragged the last injured cadet toward the exit, pushing him through the doorway. Just as she turned to follow, the blast door jammed. The fire roared like a living beast behind her. "Ethan," she screamed through the comm. "The door's locked." "I'm coming." His voice was firm, steady, but she could hear the panic under it. Moments later, he appeared on the other side of the transparent barrier. His uniform was covered in smoke, his face streaked with ash. "Hold on, Lyra. I'll open it." The control panel sparked. The system refused to respond. Lyra coughed, falling to her knees as smoke filled her lungs. Ethan slammed his fist against the panel, shouting, "Come on!" "Come on," her vision blurred. The fire's reflection glowed on her skin, licking at her arms. "Go," she whispered weakly. "You'll die too." "Not without you," he shouted. With a loud crash, he forced the emergency lever open. The door gave way for a split second. He ran in, covering her with his body as another explosion rocked the hallway. The force threw them both across the floor. The flames surrounded them, the air thick with heat and smoke. Ethan tried to lift her, coughing hard. "Stay with me, Lyra, please." She could barely hear him. Her eyes fluttered open, her voice soft. "I told you before, I'm not afraid of scars." He held her close, shielding her from the falling debris as rescue alarms blared through the ship. By the time the medics arrived, Ethan was unconscious, burned, but alive. Lyra, however, was barely breathing, her body weak, her glow fading again. As they carried her away, Ethan's hand still clung to hers. Even in unconsciousness, And for everyone watching, it was no longer the story of a scarred alien and a handsome human. It was the story of two souls bound by something far stronger than beauty, the courage to stand in the fire for someone else. The medical bay was silent except for the soft rhythm of machines. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt metal. Ethan lay on one bed, bandages wrapped across his arms and shoulders. But his eyes never left the bed beside him, where Lyra lay still pale, her breathing shallow. Days had passed since the explosion aboard the Aurora. Many cadets were recovering, but Lyra hadn't woken up yet. Her body was fragile, her burns deep. The doctors said she had saved 5 lives before the fire consumed her section. But Ethan didn't care about the numbers. He just wanted her to open her eyes. He sat beside her, holding her hand gently. Her once bright skin was now marked again, new scars tracing over the old ones. But to him, she had never looked more beautiful. "You said you weren't afraid of scars," he whispered, brushing a lock of silver hair from her face. "You liar. You were never afraid. It was the rest of us who were." He stayed like that for hours, talking softly. Sometimes he read aloud from his old journal. Sometimes he just sat in silence, counting the steady beeps of the monitor. Then one night, when the stars outside the window glowed softly through the glass, Lyra stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment she looked confused, then her gaze found him. "Ethan," she whispered weakly. He almost laughed and cried at the same time. "Lyra, you're awake." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "You look terrible," he grinned. "You should see yourself." A weak laugh escaped her throat and tears filled his eyes. He couldn't stop himself. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. "You scared me, Lyra, you really scared me. I thought I wouldn't make it this time," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I heard your voice." I followed it back. He closed his eyes, his heart full. "You always find your way back." When the doctors arrived, they were surprised to see her awake. News spread quickly through the academy. Everyone who had once avoided her, the same cadets who whispered about her scars, now came quietly to her room, guilt and admiration mixing in their faces. Lyra didn't blame them. She simply smiled, her gentle voice steady. "Scars don't make us ugly," she told one of the young students who came to apologize. "They remind us that we survived." Those words spread through the academy like wildfire. She became a symbol, not of beauty lost, but of strength reborn. Weeks later, when both she and Ethan had healed enough, the academy held a small ceremony. The headmaster stood before the crowd of students and officers. "For bravery beyond duty," he said, "we honor Lyra of Velen and Ethan Vale of Earth." The hall erupted in applause. Lyra stood tall beside Ethan, dressed in her new uniform. Her scars shone faintly under the lights, not hidden, not covered. She no longer tried to hide who she was. As they stepped outside after the ceremony, the twin suns of the planet bathed the sky in gold and crimson. Lyra looked up, the warmth touching her face. Ethan walked beside her, his arm gently brushing against hers. "Do you ever wish," he asked softly, "that none of it happened? The fire, the pain, the scars." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, her eyes calm. "No," she said finally. "Because without them, I never would have found you." He smiled, his throat tightening. "You think I'm the lucky one?" She chuckled softly. "You are. I saved your life twice." He laughed too, the sound light and full of peace. Then he reached out and held her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally, as if they had always belonged that way. Together they walked toward the horizon, two souls scarred but shining brighter than ever, and somewhere far beyond the academy walls, the story of the alien girl with scars and the human who loved her spread through the stars, reminding everyone that beauty is not in perfect faces, but in the hearts that burn for others. Because sometimes, the brightest light comes from those who have walked through the fire and still choose to love.